Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and I want to wish you all a happy Friday the 13th. One of the first things I'll say about this day is, we have a lot of myth around the Friday the 13th being a day of bad luck and all of these things. But I found an interesting article about Friday the 13th and some other meaning around it. And anyway, it's really interesting. You can go to my Facebook page, which is yew-chi Wellness, and read the article about the significance of Friday the 13th and how it relates to celebrating the goddess. So that is beautiful. So hopefully none of you were running around today thinking that it was a day of bad luck. Hopefully you're having a beautiful Friday and getting ready for a nice weekend. Now this has been such an interesting journey. I can't tell you how odd it has been for me to do the podcast every single day. It's been quite interesting. So this is day 12. And we are on the Justice card. So if this is your first time tuning in, over the last 12 days, we have been doing a journey through the major arcana of tarot. And we're looking at each card each day to look at the teachings of the card and considering how we can meditate on the energy of each card and look at how it is represented in our own lives, or what we can learn from this information just to support us in our own transformation and our own healing. Because even beyond divination, the tarot is full of wisdom, and the major arcana really speaks to these journeys of, being here in form and what it's like to go through the process of waking up to our true nature. So again, we are here on the Justice card today, and yesterday we looked at the Wheel of Fortune, and a lot of times that card is looked at as the energy of like karma, what comes around goes around, that type of thing. But we also were looking at the energy of that card of how the choices we make really impact us and our spiritual alchemy. The decisions that we make and how they impact us even energetically, let alone what plays out in the material realm. So here we move on to the Justice card, and it's like once whatever comes up, whatever lesson, whatever circumstance comes up for us on our Wheel of Fortune, justice is where we land, so to speak. So this is like, okay, well, you made a particular choice, you have maybe allowed certain thoughts to echo in the mind, and now we're looking at the result of it. So this is really like standing in the mirror in a lot of ways. And, sometimes we look a lot at our physical reality to determine the consequence of our action. You know what I mean? So say, for example, you got into an argument with a friend, I don't know, and then your friend doesn't talk to you. Well, maybe you did something that made that person upset, and then the consequence is that they no longer want to speak to you. But there is a deeper implication than just what happens externally. Our choices and our decisions also, again, impact us energetically. So one of the first things I want you to consider today is like, have you made a choice that really just eats you up inside? Is there something that you hold in your space that you just can't shake, and it may be something that you regret? It may be something that it just burns you up inside and you can't escape the mind. So this card, in its, just general translation, is about fairness. It's about balance. If it's used or it comes up in a reading, it can also be connected to legality, any legal issues, legal matters. But we're looking at this again in terms of our own spiritual evolution. So one of the first things we'll look at is the number of this card, which is the number 11. And 11 is a beautiful symbol of balance. And it also, the number 11 to me, it reminds me of the number 1 being, universal oneness or source energy, separate from nothing, the number 1. But then the number 1 projects itself out, creating a reflection or projection of itself. And I see that as us. We are the physical embodiment or the physical representation of all there is. We are like an illusion of duality. So the 11 is really also a reminder that while we are here in the physical realm and having a very physical experience, we are still also one with all that exists. And there is balance in the 11 where one could be representative of the divine feminine and the other representative of the divine masculine. So today we are looking at where we are, looking at any energy that we hold, and really taking ownership that our choice got us here. It may have been an action that you took or not, the change that you made in your life or not, or the healing and transformation that you allowed or not. All of this is like coming forward today to ask us to stand in the mirror without trying to point fingers at anyone else. This is about looking at ourselves, accessing our own truth. You hear the word justice, it can also kind of sound like just us. Just us. No one else. We are the only ones who can restore balance in our lives, balance in our energy. We are the only ones who can stand and look at the truth of our matter and choose how we heal and transform. So a big part of this energy today is being in our integrity. So one of the things that we've looked at with every card has been the associated planet and the associated element. So the associated element with this card is air, which we know air is associated with thought. And it's also the planet Venus. And Venus is the goddess of love. So this is very important because when we hear justice or we hear like stand in front of the mirror and take accountability and really be, truthful and taking accountability, that all sounds very strong and even kind of rigid. But with this energy of Venus, we can really see how there's compassion for ourselves in this. Sometimes the hardest things for us to do are the most supportive of us. Now, when we look at this card, let's look at the different elements of the card. Justice card. One of the first things that stands out to me are the scales. And the scales are also the symbol for the astrological sign Libra. And Libra is the sign associated with air and Venus. So anyway, we have these scales, and in the picture, they are balanced. And this person is holding the scales in her left hand. And our left hand is our divine feminine energy. So this symbol really speaks to the balance of logic and intuition. But another thing about the scales is it has us ask the question, have we gone too far one way or the other? Is there any area in your life right now where maybe you're being extreme? Maybe you have gone too far. Or again, maybe you've made a choice that is like eating you up inside, even if it was a while ago. Something's out of balance, something's out of order. Well, we're going to try to restore some of that balance today. So if you think back to the High Priestess card, there was also the veil that the High Priestess was sitting in front of, and it was like the veil between our conscious mind and our higher consciousness. But we spoke about how we have the ability to access that. And she was really, sitting in front of that veil from universal wisdom. Now here in the Justice card, there's also a veil behind this woman, and it's considered the veil between divine law and law of man. So behind her, behind the veil, we see that color yellow again, which can be a symbol of a higher consciousness. And again, we're dealing now with the law of man. We're dealing with the consequence of our own action. So where the Wheel of Fortune that we looked at yesterday really is the energy of the universal law of motion. The Wheel of Fortune is dealing with universal laws. But here in the Justice card, this is the law of man. So we're dealing with the reality of what it is we have chosen to do. Now, another thing about this card is you can see that the person has on a crown. And like the High Priestess, I just want to point out right away, is they are also sitting in between two pillars. Now, these pillars are representative of the constraints of the physical world. And there are, again, things that we have to deal with here, the consequence of our action. So this person is wearing a crown, and in the crown you can see this little blue square right in the center. And that blue square is a symbol of insight. It's about clarity of mind, concise thought, but it's about having or using your insight. A lot of times when we are dealing with something that is a result of our choice or consequence, and it doesn't matter what your intention was. If there's something that is bothering you, again, like something eating you up inside, that you played a hand in, sometimes it's hard for us to look at it from a space of neutrality. Again, we often fall into a space of blame and pointing the finger. It's what they did. We get caught up in someone's response to our action, or we say we have reacted because of someone else's choice. But when we step out of that into our true insight, we always have choice in our response. We have choice in the seeds that we plant. This card has the energy of reminding us that we reap what we sow. The seeds that we plant, again, our intention. So again, this is about taking responsibility for wherever you are now. There might be a circumstance you're dealing with that's aggravating or annoying. There may be, again, just some energy that you're dealing with internally. But take responsibility for the hand that you've played in that. And the beauty is when we're honest with ourselves, we can then learn from whatever choice we've made so that we can be more mindful of what we plant next. So one thing I want to point out is this is not about punishment. Sometimes, again, we will fall into like a victim mode of like, oh, woe is me. I can't believe I'm dealing with this. Why is this happening? This is not about punishment. It's an opportunity to take ownership, to really see and understand what it is we are learning. And this knowledge, this clarity of mind, this insight is meant to support our growth. Denial won't help. Blaming other people is not going to help. That never helps. It's really about understanding the impact of your own choice. Now, the person in the card is also holding a sword in their right hand, and the right side is related to the divine masculine. But the right hand is, or them holding it in the right hand, is a symbol of using our logical mind. And remember, the scales are balancing logic and intuition. But with this upright sword, it's really about being in our right mind, to be just, to be fair, to use discernment, and also to see the light and the dark of all matters. That's why there's this double edge to the sword. You can see there's a line down the middle, and there's a double edge to it. That is supposed to be a symbol of us seeing the light and the dark, but also having the ability to be impartial, seeing the bigger picture, both sides of the story. Now, the sword being very upright is, I would say, like to free yourself from all the BS, really, okay? Any old stories, any attachments, again, any blame, any resentment, and instead use your right discernment. Be in your integrity. Wherever you are right here, whatever you're dealing with in your life, consider if there's anything that needs to be acknowledged. Is there anything that you feel needs to be adjusted? Is there anything out of balance? Balance is a big one in this card. So let me give you an example, especially how this relates to our spiritual growth. You know, sometimes we give too much attention. We pour too much into one thing. So we can even become too focused on our spirituality and forget to attend to our physical reality. You know, some people go over the edge and go way out there and become fanatical, disconnected, and things can become chaotic for them because they stepped out of balance. There's a uniqueness in this human experience because we really are finding balance between the physical and the non-physical. We can also become too focused on the material, forgetting our spiritual nature. And that will show up later in one of the cards, that the Devil card actually. We'll get to that. But sometimes we just get too focused on something and it throws us out of balance. And even there will be a consequence for that. So what's coming to mind is there was a beautiful woman, Kesley, who came to share her story on the podcast maybe a couple of months ago. And she was she still is, she's very much into fitness and health. But when she went too far deep into that, too focused on her physical fitness or too focused on her, competitive side as it related to her physical fitness, she ended up hurting her body because she went too far. And then she had to deal with the consequence of going too far, of the choice that she made. Now, the beautiful thing is once she took ownership of that, recognized that, stood in her own mirror, she then had the opportunity to plant new seeds and decide, I need to make balance between mind, body, and spirit. So she dealt with the consequence of her choice and took new action. And her new action includes balance. Balance of mind, body, energy. This crown that the person is wearing in the Justice card also reminds me of that. There are 3 points or 3 prongs on their crown. And it reminds me of mind, body, energy, that unification. And no matter what it is, again, that we may be taking ownership of, we can always find positive resolution. It's just a reminder to consider your ways of being. Again, what is out of order? And if there's anything out of order, out of balance in your life, what was your contribution to that circumstance? Be honest with yourself. Because only in your honesty can you have clarity. Can you move into a space of neutrality? Be impartial. Now, another thing in this card is the person is wearing a red cloak or red garment, dress, I don't know, robe, and they have a green cloak over it. And the color red in this can be symbolic of action and the action that we take. And green is associated with the planet Venus, and also it's a symbol of growth. And then in the middle of this cloak, or the green cloak that they're wearing, you see this little pendant. It's a yellow square with a red circle in between. And that square is a symbol of protecting that circle of oneness, the eternal oneness. We are one with all that exists. And in our right mind, in our clarity, having that divine insight, we're able to return to that understanding. Now, another thing in this card is you see a little foot poking out under the robe. That's just a reminder of the consequence of our action. But even think about the spiritual consequence, the spiritual implication. Again, the choices that we make influence us energetically, emotionally. Think of, again, any time where you are riddled with regret, or shame or guilt, all of these things, it eats away at you. You feel constrictive. It makes you feel just like heavy and stuck. But when we can look at ourselves, look in the mirror, and forgive, transform, heal, whatever it is that we do to work through those things, again, we learn from what we did in the past. We learn from the energies we're holding now. We gain understanding and insight and compassion. We allow ourselves to move into higher awareness. So one of the things, again, to consider today is how you will move forward from here. What are you planting now? What are your seeds that you are sowing now? And even though some things that we plant, we do it out of like impulse, or we do it out of ego. Again, we can go back to the wisdom of the strength card. Remember that no matter what you do, that wheel of fortune is going to come back around. And all the seeds are going to take fruit somehow. Now, some of them may take a while to grow. But when it does grow, when it does manifest, we have to deal with it. We have to stand in our truth. We can't escape it. We can't escape our choice. And again, even if you try to escape it externally, run away, point to other people, whatever you do externally, there is still this justice that has to be served with yourself internally. There will always be that internal truth that will haunt you if you don't look at it. You have the strength to look at you. You have the ability to access your higher wisdom, to have more understanding. You have the tools of the magician to help you transform, to heal. How are you going to deal with it? So this is a beautiful energy, if nothing else, to just, look at yourself today. Be honest with yourself today, especially about anything where you feel out of balance in life, or if there is anything that you've been holding on to that you just don't like looking at. it helps you to move forward. And again, it gives you an opportunity to plant new seeds. This is all about our healing. This is all about our growth. It's about restoring balance of mind, body, spirit. Now, on the other side, before I go, I have been talking about the consequence of our choice and action, but we also plant things that are very positive and supportive, right? We do things that nurture our growth in ways that aren't heavy or don't feel dark. So even acknowledge the fruits of your efforts. Just like I mentioned this week, I've had a lot of insight this week in doing this journey of realizing and looking hindsight of wow, all this effort of looking at myself through these years, all of my effort of making a real effort of working on my ego and different aspects of myself, I can see now how it is playing out. I can see the impact of the work that I've done. And it's been an extended period of time. So one of the things with this too is don't get caught up in time frame. One of the things that's coming up to tell you about this, just as it relates to our spirituality and our spiritual practice, I've told you about this on the show before, but there was a time where I was I was cursing the universe. And it was at the beginning of doing this work. I was meditating every day. I was doing Reiki. I was doing all of this beautiful work. And it was really fun and exciting at first. And then I hit a wall and felt like everything was falling away. I felt like I was going through hell. And I literally was cursing the universe. Why is this happening? I'm doing all of this spiritual work. I'm trying to be a better person. In that moment, I didn't understand what happens when we start to do this work. I didn't understand how connecting with myself, trying to love myself and work on myself was going to also drudge up all of my hurt, my insecurity, my seeds that I had planted. I didn't understand that even though I was focused so much on light and love and all of these things, I still had to deal with the seeds of, my wheel of karma. And once I understood that and understood I was still working through fear, through doubt, through worry, through all kinds of things, it made it much easier. When I finally said crap, well, I can't avoid this. I have to look at me. I have to look at what I hold and try to understand this discomfort. I have to look at me and understand how this is manifesting in my life. And once I was able to take ownership, I was able to then really work through my spiritual healing, my own transformation. And no, listen, it wasn't easy, but it was doable because then I understood what was happening. And then on the other side of that, anyone doing this work will tell you the changes that happen, what you learn, how your perspective changes and shifts. You can't even put into words how big it is, how grateful you are, how much freedom you start to feel, because you're no longer captive to everything you try to hold and bury and hide from. So free yourself. Look at that sword. Remember, free yourself from the BS today. And really remember that there's a lot of compassion that we can hold for ourselves when looking in the mirror and being in our integrity and taking responsibility for the choices that we've made. So I would love to hear your interpretations about this card. I would love to hear if anything came up for you. I would love to hear just whatever is going on for you in your journey. Again, you can join us in the Seeker Circle on Facebook. Just go to my website, yew-chi.com. That's YEWCHI.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get access to more free gifts. You will get a link that takes you right to the Seeker Circle. And don't forget, there is an article on my yew-chi Wellness Facebook page all about Friday the 13th and to take away the idea of this being such a horrible day. So I would say have a nice weekend, but I will see you again tomorrow. So have a good day, everyone, and remember to always journey in love.